it plays into an authoritarianism or authoritarian government. I'm having a really hard time saying that tonight.
Get used to
It
it.
plays, yeah,
I shouldn't be laughing
right?
about that, but
No, that's not a funny joke.
no, it's not. Welcome to Critical Culture. I'm Travis.
I'm Josh.
All right, Josh, news or new?
We got to talk about the signal mishap. And you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, the Signal chat shared around the world.
Can you believe that? For those who don't know, there was a group of high-ranking military officials in our government, which, look it up, you'll find them. It's everywhere. Had included a journalist, the editor-in-chief, if I recall correctly, from The Atlantic, in a group chat on Signal, where they discussed military plans. I believe they called them top secret, at least classified military plans that the journalist probably shouldn't have access to.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, if you follow the story, the journalist had thought it was maybe a prank because, you know, I'm sure he gets all that all the time, and watched the details, and the details turned out to be accurate, and now it's a big thing and a huge breach of our the operational security of our military and military structure. It's not a good look.
No, it's not. And some of the content of the discussion, too, is pretty pathetic. They were discussing the very real and implemented plan to shoot off some rockets and make this attack. And they're bringing up like political points in there. Or make sure in messaging we talk about how this is Joe Biden's fault. Like, really?
Right.
Like, what is that part of the justification here? As well, you know, we've been nice to him for 4 years. That was pretty bad. Like, trash talking the Europeans, and there's like a grain of truth to that. Europe hasn't been spending as much as they should, and that's a good thing that's coming out of some of this. That they're having to spend some money for their self-defense. Shouldn't necessarily abandon them. The thing that I look at out of all this that nobody else is talking about, Josh, like there's a universe out there. There's a reality where somebody intentionally included him in that chat as like a modern day Deep Throat, right? And
Interesting.
And maybe, just maybe, if we're lucky, they will continue to work over the next couple of years to make leaks like that. And if there was a reality where that happened, I would guess it would be Marco Rubio, because I think he's maybe one of the more serious people there, and you can just see it on his face where he looks disgusted when he's in these meetings. He's like, what did I get myself into?
Right.
Wow.
So I was going to say, I never thought of that angle. That's an interesting point of view. Maybe it was intentional. A little
political fan fiction there, if you will.
Right? One can hope.
Yep, one can hope. More
so what about you?
From.
Yeah.
I was looking tonight before the show, and I saw a whole raft of space defense related news, which builds off of our last two episodes, right? We talked about the moon, and we talked about defense. So there's a couple of things, we won't get into them in detail, but apparently China and Russia are doing what they're calling satellite dogfighting. So all the countries realize now that controlling space, and especially communication satellites and imaging satellites, having the ability to down your enemy satellites is key in war. So they're doing some things there that are scary. The U.S. is responding, at least with news, saying they're looking more at like directed energy weapons and lasers and radio jamming and the type of anti-satellite things that they may be able to do. So there's stories out there about that. There was another interesting one on Ars Technica. There was an effort last year to see how quickly they would be able to get a new satellite up into space.
Oh.
And if I remember correctly, they got something up within 27 hours. So this is another like consideration, like war in space. In war, things change like fast, and you need to respond, and sometimes you need to get replacement hardware up or something with special capabilities in space. So they were able to turn around within 27 hours. So now Space Force is funding what they're calling basically an aircraft carrier in orbit. So imagine almost like the ISS, but it's got a whole bunch of canisters with different satellites and things up there to be pre-positioned to be able to respond to something that may be going on. And these are things that serious people are planning and spending a lot of money on.
Travis, the future is here.
It makes sense. Yeah. It's, you know, and these things will be faster. I think when we were kids, there was this concept of, this is what it's going to be like in the future. And it took like 10, 15 years for it to come true. Some of these things were like, wow, that's so futuristic. They're going to happen within 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
And we may not even know about it when it happens because, again, like your book Skunk Works that you mentioned the other week, you don't know the full story. You know what they're messaging to try and get people like used to the idea that this stuff could happen.
Exactly.
Because guess what? It's happening. We just don't want to tell you
yet. we gotta give it to you gently so you're not shocked at how much we can do.
Slowly raise the temperature so they can get used to it. And the final piece in this series of stories was the U.S. Space Force certified United Launch Alliance Vulcan for national security space launch missions. So that means SpaceX is not the only ride into space, and that's a good thing.
That is a good thing, yeah.
So lots of good news, fun stuff, especially for science fiction writers.
Right? Yeah, no kidding. You mean our prophets?
Yeah, well, that's right. Last time I was at the library, they renamed science fiction to dystopian news. just current events. There's no longer dystopian science fiction, only current events.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's disappointing.
Yeah. So that's all I got for the news. I think it's time maybe we move on to the main topic for the show.
Okay.
It started off, I guess we'll start with a couple of upcoming protests that I've posted about a few times. There's a Veto Project 2025, which is the local one that's in Appleton on April 5th. And there are ones around the nation. I've also seen Hands Off 2025.com. So hands off, like hands off Medicare, hands off security, hands off legal immigrants that have papers. Hands off a lot of bad things. So April 5th is a huge day of upcoming protest, which fits very well with the topic we wanted to cover of nonviolent action.
Right.
And there's also, I think we could start, there was a post I did on Facebook the other day and it just blew up and it was a bunch of people crowded around a Tesla lot. Like, you know, the car wasn't on fire yet, but you were wondering if they were going to attack it or not. And there was a sign on the wall behind it that it basically referred to January 6th. Tourists taught me that this is a love fest. So like all this conservative rage about a very few people trashing very few Tesla cars. They make it sound like it's half the people that are protesting or something, or it's happening in every city, in every state. It's a relatively small amount of people. But I posted that and it just blew up. It struck a chord. And I think one of the most common responses I got was they're like, you can't justify the people destroying Teslas and vandalizing property. I'm like, well, no, I'm not. Like, you want to read that into me because you think here's a liberal. He's like justifying what these people are doing. I'm like, I don't believe that violence or vandalism is the answer. And if I thought it did in this case, then maybe that makes it okay for January 6th. And it certainly wasn't okay for January 6th. So yeah, I'm not, I wouldn't condone that sort of stuff at all.
Right. No, absolutely not. That is not what this is about. As a matter of fact, leading into our discussion here, the so along the lines of nonviolent resistance, from 1966 to 99, nonviolent civic resistance was huge in 50 of the 67 transitions from authoritarianism. There we go. Couldn't get that word out. So to say you know, on face value, it feels like nonviolent resistance may not be doing anything, and that's what the temptation is for the people damaging and destroying property, things like that. But the truth is that nonviolent is much more effective in making change than it may seem at face value.
Right. And this is something that in the 20th century became fairly well wide known. And there was a lot of sharing of the ideas like around the world in different movements. I was trying to bring up Notebook. There's a really good video on YouTube that talks about this. And it talks about the whole chain of events, like this person taught this person, and then it went to Gandhi, and then it went from Gandhi to this other person, and this other person to Martin Luther King. And then there's people like Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Buddhist monk from Vietnam that is very much into non-violent action. But there's lots of examples of big success in some of the biggest heroes of the last century, and like Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Like, these are the methods they used to actually get things done, because when you're Gandhi and you're in India, there's no way Indians could compete with the military might of Britain. They couldn't have like an armed resistance.
Right.
And they couldn't have won. Like, nonviolent means were the only way to do it. All right. So all this information was shared. And I think I had my first taste of it when I read a biography of Martin Luther King. And it talked about how that was such a big part and such a struggle with the movement to stay nonviolent. And
sure.
There was like the Black Panther movement started around then too. And they were a little bit more aggressive in terms of, no, we're going to fight back. We're going to be actively doing things. So it's hard to maintain, but it comes down to when there's outsiders that are looking at this and they're going to see the situation, and let's say they're neutral, or they don't know enough about it to really know. They're going to look at what the government is doing in their actions and what the people on the other side that disagree with the government are doing in their actions. And when there's vandalism, when there's violence, when there's stuff like that, pretty soon that paints that whole movement as being part of the problem. All right, now you're part of the problem. We've got no sympathy for you. You're part of the problem.
Right, and that in a sense, or at least in their minds, justifies violent retribution against this group, or a heavy-handed approach at dispersing, because they're just troublemakers. They're just rioters, and that's the line you want to not cross. Right? Is it plays into an authoritarianism or authoritarian government. Having a really hard time saying that tonight.
Get used to it.
It plays, yeah.
I shouldn't be laughing about that, but
no, that's not a funny joke.
No, it's not.
No, but it plays right into their playbook, right? I mean, that's what they want the masses to do, because it gives them power. It gives them reason and an excuse to crack down, or martial law, everything else, to just come in with force and fight force with force and take more power, truthfully.
Yep. I mean, you can hear the words terrorist and extreme and enemy within coming out of Trump's mouth the second some of these protests end up with like looting or rioting.
I mean, look at how fast the Trump administration moved to call these protests against Tesla terrorism and terrorists.
Yeah.
I mean, it was almost immediate. And just happened so quickly. Yep.
And it's really not going to do any good. It's not going to harm them financially. There's no positive benefit that comes from it. You're not encouraging anybody else to do anything good. Like, I get that you got passion and you're really pissed off about what's going on, and believe me, I'm with you.
Right. Yeah.
I'm with you on that one. But you're not helping anything.
Right. Right. You're making it worse, as a matter of fact.
Yep.
Yeah, you're not moving any closer to the solution.
Yep. So, and it's and to just say nonviolent action, that doesn't necessarily mean pacifism. That is not like extreme pacifistic nature, right? It's not saying you will never defend yourself. It's saying you need to do things that are nonviolent, so you retain the moral high ground in your actions, and you're bringing the attention to your cause,
Right.
not your actions being wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
you, like, there may be some level of still, like, people will have to probably go to jail for some of the protesting, and some of it might be annoying. I think that's another
Sure.
concept is like, you talk about, well, there was like brigades of semi trucks, I believe, that convened on Washington, D.C., and even in Canada in some place within the last couple of years, right? So that's a type of nonviolent
Yeah.
action. And you talk about potentially some of that goes on versus Trump. There's still a lot of talk about the optics of that. And are you just pissing people off, or are you like really doing something effective? Like if it's instead like an organized strike to people that work at ports to slow down the whole economy, like then maybe it's
Sure.
worth it, and that's kind of good trouble. And you know, you're not directly impacting a lot of individual people, but you're impacting the people with money and the flow of
Right.
their money throughout the
Well,
economy.
and that's a critical point too of well, truthfully any protest, but making sure that the target and the people that it impacts are, well, the people it needs to. You know, you're impacting people's pocketbooks. When I say people, ideally the people that are causing the pain. These oligarchs, you know, Musk, and the billionaires of our country here. You know, it has to be well thought out and a well planned action, of course, in order for it to be effective. But we can see this happening in, you know, Trump's. Sorry, I keep saying Trump. Musk's Tesla with its you know, with the recent protests and everything else. You know, it's being branded as a swastika. Countries refusing to buy or refusing to sell Teslas. His stock price has gone down, and he's feeling that pain a little bit because, I mean, there's a threshold where if the stock price of Tesla drops to a certain point, there's gonna be some pain for Musk. You know, he may have to give up Twitter.
Yeah. Right. Well,
So that's what you want to do or accomplish with these, a prolonged, nonviolent. Of course, you know, I'm not advocating at all for the vandalism and the attacks on Teslas, but prolonged nonviolent protests like this with a very specific goal can be effective. They can be very effective.
right. There's a fascinating author and researcher named Gene Sharp that I heard of within the past week. And so some of his writings are what informed the people in Egypt around the 2010-2011 timeline during
Oh,
the Arab
sure.
Spring, when they
Yeah.
did oust their government. And unlucky for them, they didn't get a great new government, but at least they got rid of the old one. Sometimes you
Yeah.
got to do these things a couple times before it shakes out right. Right.
Right.
So Gene Sharp was someone that inspired them and informed their actions. And Gene Sharp was born before World War II. And after World War II, he started to look at like attempts to overthrow or counteract the authoritarian regimes of that day, like the Nazis and things of that nature. And he worked for the Albert Einstein Institute. And he did a like 3-part series called The Politics of Nonviolence or Nonviolent Action, something like that. And in it, it has 198 methods of nonviolent action. Now, we're not going to go through all of those on the show. There's a lot there. I thought about doing
There's a lot there.
some short videos on some of the good ones or how they map to current day. But they fall into major categories. The methods of nonviolent protest and persuasion. So this is the kind of stuff you can be doing on social media, like formal statements, public speeches. I would consider doing like a reel and posting it in public. That is a public speech.
Sure.
You can also get
Absolutely.
into speeches in person in public, and I think there's a lot of impact there if you set up a space for it. There's a lot of other stuff that gets into like what we think of as memes today, communications with a wider audience. You know, slogans, caricatures, and symbols, all that sort of stuff that I look at that and I'm like, that's social media right there. And just a lot of other stuff that is persuasion type materials, public assemblies, things of that nature. There's also methods of social non-cooperation. So now this is not persuasion. Now we're like trying to gum up the works without going too far out of the way. So that's ostracism of persons, like Elon Musk. Like he's kind of ostracized for a lot of people right now. Non-cooperation with events, customs, institutions, or social systems. It gets into economic boycotts. That's economic non-cooperation. Workers boycotts.
I think maybe a decent example would be recently when word got out that Musk was requiring everyone to was it government wide? I don't remember if it was a specific department or government wide, but to send an email with 5 things they accomplished during the week to justify their position. And the email was leaked with the email they were supposed to send this to. So there's a lot of they overloaded Musk's inbox and basically made it useless because people, the public, would just send garbage to his inbox and sign him up for spam emails and everything else in a sense to overload the administrative system and make it ineffective. Because it was such a silly request, but he opened himself up to that by publishing, or that email being published.
Yeah. There's other wild stuff in here, like just slowdowns. Like, hey, everybody, maybe you can't fully go on strike. Show up at work and get paid, and just don't do as much.
Right.
Just do whatever you can. Like whatever. If some van full of guys with masks on can pull up to my house, pull me out of my house, and whisk me away without telling anyone, and that's just approved and okay here, maybe I really don't need to work so hard at work.
Sure, right.
Unless they're the ones that are going to send the van to pull me out of here and hide me.
Yeah.
That would be good. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, that's all, all part of it. Civil disobedience, right? Just making that good trouble, as maybe you've heard that phrase before. But just not complying with these overly oppressive laws or rules or mandates that are coming out. We're seeing that happen in some of the career bureaucrats, if you will, doing that and fighting back, and that's it's been pretty impactful so far, at least in the ones that are being reported on. We had drawing a blank here, Travis. It was what was her position? I don't recall her position, but Trump and his team just tried to fire or oust her, and she said no, I'm staying here. I'm just going to keep doing my job.
Yeah. People at all levels have to stand up and say no.
Yep.
No.
Right. Because otherwise,
then
they just keep going further and further and taking a step. Taking another. You give them an inch, they take a foot. That's the old saying, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what'll happen.
Yep. So that brings up kind of this last high-level category of nonviolent actions, and that's methods of nonviolent interventions. So now it's a little bit more like the physical interventions, like the sit-ins, stand-ins, wait-ins, whatever, like nonviolent raids. You can let's see here, overloading of administrative systems. So you talk about overloading Elon Musk's email system. That sounds like a modern day equivalent of it. And the thing is again, Gene Sharp, 198 methods. You can find this PDF online for free. Check them all out for yourself. We don't have time.
Yeah, it's very informative.
To go through all of them, but it's great. And what you'll find is he did a whole bunch of other books too. I think another one that was really interesting, I can't wait to read, is From Dictatorship to Democracy. So this one, when we talk about the 198 methods, that's more like the tactics. This is what you're going to do, hopefully in line with achieving a specific objectives. You're not just trying to be difficult, but you want to be smart about it and achieve objectives. And that's part of where the book From Dictatorship to Democracy comes in, because that's more of the strategy, a conceptual framework for liberation. And there's other books out there on the Albert Einstein site where this is how you evaluate the political base of the autocrat and how you evaluate the systems and what your capabilities are and start to line up what should our objectives be to erode their power base, because a lot of it does have to do with their political power base. And that's to be a big goal, or the primary goal of these types of nonviolent actions, is to erode at that power base and let them see firsthand the injustice, and that there are this many people that are that committed to this is the truth and it must be this way. We're not going to fall into an autocratic state. That the people on the sidelines that voted for him were like, you know what? Yeah, I can't really do this, right?
Right.
So from dictatorship to democracy, and there's, like I said, there's other books in the series. Highly recommend them.
Yeah, and even just an update on Gene Sharp's methods or tactics. In 2012, two, I don't know their titles, but Mary Joyce and Patrick Meyer, what they did is took his 198 tactics and updated it to be more relevant to today's technologies. They've added some new tactics, such as QR codes, digital file sharing, nonviolent media hijacking, trending hashtags. So things that are more relevant to today's technology and still as effective. So they have, let me see if I can find where the easiest way to find them. But again, the name Mary Joyce and Patrick Meyer. I don't know if they put a PDF out or what they did, but so let me see if I can find it here. Maybe we can link it or something.
Yeah, okay. So what is this? Civil Resistance 2.0. I see what you're talking about now. This is pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's really it's neat that they updated this to make it make more sense to the younger generation, but the new generation of activists, and how they can use tools that are familiar to them to accomplish the same tactics that Gene Sharp had laid out in his 198 methods.
Yeah, it's interesting because people close to our generation, we didn't really have to protest anything. We had it pretty easy. Like the people that grew up in the 60s and the late 60s, there was a lot of it. I think it was primarily younger people. I don't know because I wasn't there, but now a bunch of people our age are going to have to learn and do this too, because now there's a really critical time to do this sort of thing as soon as possible, before things get worse and it gets even harder and people get more scared about being spirited away because they're a terrorist, because they oppose Trump. So yeah, that's cool. I was thinking about going through the 198 things and doing this sort of thing to say this is the modern day equivalent. That's really awesome. We will have to do show notes for this episode. We haven't done them yet, but there's a lot of good resources here. And speaking about protesting and resources, we're going to include some links, and you can also do your research showing up at these initial protests. I don't really expect it's going to be a scary or hairy situation. I certainly hope it isn't. And it shouldn't be, and let's all keep it that way, but be prepared, take it seriously like it might be, and do the little bit of research about how do you protect yourself? How do you change to a PIN on your phone instead of a biometric password so police can't unlock your phone, or just not bring your phone, or like have whatever it is. Like we're not going to go into how to protect yourself or prepare for protesting, but do your research before April 5th. And be prepared, and talk to your friends that are going, and go in groups too. And have plans where if something happens and you start to get separated and things get hairy, where are you going to meet up again? And,
it's better to be prepared. Yeah. Better to be prepared.
Seriously. And what else would they have to know about protesting? I guess hopefully you've all seen the video now with those two old lawyers that are talking about protesting, and they're like giving a bunch of advice. Like, if you find yourself in this situation and you're in the back seat of the police car and they ask you which friends you were with, shut the fuck up.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
You'll never forget that.
That's all the advice they need through the whole video is shut the fuck up. But I recommend watching it. It's very good, and take the advice. It's solid.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's at least a place to start. If you don't say anything, they can't use anything against you.
Yep.
Don't give them any more information. And yeah. I mean, I think that's the simplest way to put it. Just that's another act. That's another a method of nonviolent resistance.
Right. And a little bit back to the point about preparing for the protest, if it is like things with your phone. It's also how you would use your phone to capture video or audio of what's going on, or send a message to someone quick about what's going on, or have like your communications channels set up ahead of time.
Right.
That's a good idea. Gather that evidence. Put it out there if anything weird happens. So, but it's
right.
take it seriously. This hopefully we see a lot of people out on April 5th. I know I'm going down to the Houdini Plaza in Appleton.
Yeah, it should be a pretty good event down there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, did you have anything else, Josh? Or you think we're pretty much talked out on nonviolent action for today?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary, and good we made some good points there, so feel good about it.
Yep, cool. All right, thanks everyone. Till next time.